This is the Live Well and Thrive podcast, hosted by Torchia, health and wellness expert. It's time to shape up, America.
Hi, it's Mike Torchia, and welcome to Live Well and Thrive. I have a very interesting guest. This man had such a journey when he was about 20 years old. He went to East Africa because he wanted to be consumed by an animal in the jungles, whether it be a lion or a tiger or whatever it may be. But when he got there, he realized what he was doing was insane, and he wanted to turn his life around. So instead of actually getting killed by a wild boar or a hippopotamus or a rhinoceros, he ended up surviving it, but it was an enlightening journey. And he had gone through such tremendous emotional stress from a failed marriage or a family friend that passed, and he was severely depressed. So he went on this self-destruction mission, but it was probably the best thing he ever did. Turned his whole mind around. So this episode is very, very important. It has to deal with mental health, but it's to show a man's journey that actually helped him turn his life around and become a thriving person again. So David Fryberger, welcome to the show.
Thanks, great to be here.
So the books you wrote is MZUNGU.
MZUNGU, yep.
And you've written this novel, but you haven't published it yet, correct?
Not quite yet, just putting the finishing touches on it.
Got it. So share with the audience what your mind was like and the state of mind you were, because mental health is a very important subject matter. And what made you get to that point of where you wanted to be consumed by an animal because you're going to lose your life, you wanted to go back to nature and continue on like the explorers like David Livingstone that went on these treks, and you figured, well, those are your childhood heroes, so I'm going to go that way, right? And what kind of triggered all this?
So I was living in New York, in the city, and I got married very young. I fell in love with this beautiful girl from another country, and we ended up getting married. It turned out she married me for papers, but I didn't know that. Right, so I married for love.
Right.
So at the 2-year mark, which is when you could get your green card or something at the time, she split on me. And so I was like 22 years old at this point. I had no way of handling, the emotional fallout from that. It was something I had never experienced before. I fell in love big, and the rug got pulled out from under me pretty severely. And so I found myself in a state I had never been in before. I had never experienced a low like that. And so I was debating whether to kill myself or to kill her or to kill the guy she left me for. All those things are running around in my head. And I became very, very reckless. And I said, you know what, let me get out of Manhattan. Let me not hurt somebody else. If somebody's got to get hurt, let it be me. And Africa had been on my mind since I was a little kid, largely for the animals. I was in love with cheetahs as a little kid, and my folks took me to the zoo to see. I wanted to get a pet in the backyard. I wanted to get a pet cheetah, and I was showing my folks how we could enclose it so the cheetah wouldn't get out. And they said, well, you have to get to know cheetahs first. So they took me to the zoo, and I talked to the zookeeper. And I said, well, I want to sleep with the cheetahs tonight. Can I sleep with the cheetahs in the pen? And they said, yeah, you can. You come back tonight, and so I came back. My parents dropped me off, have my bedroll and my pillow, and I'm like, okay, I'm here to spend the night with the cheetahs. And they said, no, we didn't know you were really going to want to go through that. We can't let you do that, right? So they didn't let me do that when I was like maybe 10 years old.
Right,
when I did that.
right.
But that's how crazy I was about the animal, about the beauty of the animals, especially the ones in Africa.
So you figure if you go to Africa and you get killed by an animal, it was nature.
Yeah, I wanted, I thought if I could provoke something into killing me, then it wouldn't be suicide, right? And so that was my angle.
The guilt is off.
Yeah,
you
and then my family, those who I left behind.
Oh, David went to Africa and he got killed by a
it's not like his
right.
life was so bad he took it. You know what I mean?
Right,
that was
or
the
give
idea
the girl
going
the
on.
satisfaction.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You're right.
I'm not going to give you the credit. Hey, The tiger killed him.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
exactly. That's exactly right. That was my line
So
of thinking.
I got it. I got it. I understand your mindset now.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's actually not that crazy. I get it.
No,
you
it's
didn't want to
not
hurt
that
anybody
crazy.
else.
I didn't want to hurt
You want to
anyone.
give her the satisfaction. Hey,
Mhm.
I was trekking like my childhood heroes. I ended up getting killed by an animal. Oh well, that's how they would say it. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
poor David. But
And so I said, well, you know what? I'll throw my bike on a plane and have some panniers, a tent. So it was a solo trek across the equator, and I just kept going. And of course, I had all sorts of crazy animal experiences and wonderful experiences with people, and also some risky experiences with people over there.
weren't there like gangs or tribes too?
Yeah, well, yeah, out in the middle of nowhere, the tribes I would come across, they were very excited to see me. In fact, for over half the trip, every time I'd go through, it'd be like some dirt road, and then there'd be a little village along the side of the road, and they'd be working the farms, the land out. And when they'd see me coming from a distance, because I was quite noticeable, of course, they would all kind of run and line up along the road. And as I rode by, they waved and said, "Mzungu, Mzungu." And I had no idea what that meant. I thought they were saying like, "Hey, how's it going? Good afternoon." So I would wave back and say, "Mzungu, Mzungu" to the villagers. And it took me like 2.5 months before I realized that Mzungu means foreigner, or in some certain context, crazy white guy. And so I was shouting this back to them because I didn't understand it.
Oh my God. Well, it reminds me when I lived in Hawaii, they called me Howie. And I just thought it was a word of affection. And I told this Samoan guy that trained at the gym in Honolulu, he goes, "No, Howie's not a friendly word. You're a mainlander." So I could understand. So, but did they know what your plan was? Or they just thought you were this big guy on a bike riding around?
No, nobody knew what the plan was. Nobody knew what the plan was.
Well, they probably liked that you're by yourself in their country riding a bike.
I think one thing that they liked, that I very much liked, was that on bicycle you get to know the land, right? There's no noise. You don't have a barrier like a door or window between you and the outside world. And you're moving at a snail's pace. So I got to see the people, and they got to like experience me, touch the bike, touch me, and get to like, hey, here's this thing we haven't really seen before, at least not in this context, alone on a bicycle. And so those encounters were wonderful. And then, yeah, I had some rough spots in the cities like Dar es Salaam. Had a little run-in with some street life there, but I made it out of there too.
So what was the first confrontation with an animal or human when you got to Africa? How long was it before you got?
Maybe like, I stayed in Nairobi for like 2 or 3 days collecting supplies, and then I headed out on the bicycle, and it was Lake Naivasha. So really, it was like 1 day into the trip. Once I started pedaling,
Right.
Lake Naivasha, I was in a real rickety rowboat, and I saw some hippos out in the distance, and they looked like rocks in the water, right? And so I wanted to see how close I could get to get a picture of one of them, or however many. And so I paddle this boat, and I had a Pentax, like a 35 millimeter. So I pull it up, I'm trying to mess with it, pull it up, and I don't realize that the boat is, even though I'm not paddling, I keep moving closer and closer towards this hippo. And so right as soon as I start taking the picture, he turns and charges me. And, the water is cascading off of him, and so he starts putting a foot up on the boat. I start pedaling backwards. And once I made a little bit of distance, he gave up. He decided I wasn't worth it. But the hippo, being charged by a hippo in the water.
Well,
was the
I was
first time.
told that to die by a hippo would be a torturous death, because they drag you and they kind of drag out the kill.
Yeah.
Right. So you thank God.
Well, right, because they're herbivores. So they don't really want to eat me. They just want to best me.
Right.
Right.
Crush you.
Yeah, break my spine and then walk away. Right.
Kick some dirt on you.
Yeah.
Next, right?
Enough of you.
So now, what was the next incident?
I had the Cape buffalo are also really aggressive, and anytime they would see me from like 100 yards away, they would all, as a group, just start marching straight at me. So I could never really get off my bike and look around the landscape if there were buffalo around, because they would always come after me.
So what did you do if they come after you? With the bike, you can't go that fast, right?
I think, I don't know what their mindset is, obviously.
No, but for yours, because you sort of wanted to go there to get killed, but then again, when you saw them, you evaded it. So what made you change your mind at the last minute?
Oh, instinct, running on instinct.
Right,
Do you know what I mean?
Right, right.
Like, okay, not like this, not like this. The time that I was most at peace with it, and I didn't run, was with a lioness. This was in the Queen Elizabeth National Park on the western border of Uganda. And I had snuck in because you weren't allowed in outside of a motorized vehicle. And it had been raining. The guards weren't at the gates because it was raining. So that's how I was able to sneak in. And then like a half hour later, the rain stopped, so all the animals started coming out, like the herd's animals. And and there's no road. I'm just riding along a little, like a Jeep rut, tire rut. And my wheels are making a crunching noise on the gravel and the dirt in there. And I notice an indentation in the tall grass along next to me, and it's like following me, this indentation. So I say, I wonder what that is. So I stop the bike, I put my foot down, and I turn, and it's like the tall grass spread apart, and this giant, like yellow sun, this massive lioness head popped through. And this was really what I was waiting for. I was waiting for something beautiful to be eaten, and like give myself back to this otherworldly Eden, right?
Got it.
As opposed to just being torn up.
Yeah.
And so I was at a complete stop, and she was very curious, and she started approaching me, and I just stayed still. And she started sniffing the front tire. And then she came over to this side and got to my leg, and like she didn't touch me, but her whisker started to touch my kneecap.
Were you scared?
No, I was very much at peace in that moment, because this is all I had ever wanted, right? This was going to.
So you were saying, "Wow, this is it."
Yeah, and I was so in awe of the beauty and majesty of her that I wasn't even thinking about my goal. I just wasn't afraid of anything that would happen at that moment. Does that make sense?
You accepted it, yeah.
And so suddenly I didn't hear anything, but there must have been a skirmish somewhere off in the distance, because she just, as curious as she was about me, she lost all interest and turned away and ran, disappeared into the tall grass again, and I never saw her again.
Wow. Well, you know, when I was, I think 18, 19 years old, I worked for this German guy that had an attack training company, dog training company. And because I was very much into animals, and he showed me how he would train dogs for protection.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the very first day, it was a really vicious Rottweiler, about 185 pounds. It's called Zeus, you know. And he said, Mike, he said, I need you to put on the gear, but before you put on the gear, I want you to take out of the cabinet there's apple juice. I want you to drench your head, everything, all over your body, soak your body. Then when you put the gear on, splash it all over. And I said, why? He said, because the dog will sense through smell you're scared. And when they can smell that you're scared, they think you have ill will and you're going to attack them. So he said, don't be scared, but you will be scared because you'll get used to it. After a while, you'll be able to control it. Your body sends out an odor. That's why certain times a dog will bite you, because they smell it. They think you're going to do something. That scent puts them ready to be aware that there could be a threat, because if you're scared, that means you have poor intentions.
Yes.
Interprets.
Makes sense.
So,
yeah.
so when you're telling about the story, I was remembering that my uncle, who also shared with me, he was very good at animals, never be scared when you're going over to a new dog to pet, because it could make them lunge at you. And I think because you were at peace, that odor didn't come out, so she felt you weren't a threat. Because she was sniffing, and she didn't feel it. Now, if you were scared, it might have said, I better protect.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I think that, in a way, it was a blessing, but where also nature was showing you bonded with this animal.
Yeah.
Where I'd probably put something in your head like, wait a minute, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
Look at this beautiful animal. I got to see this animal, and she walked away. Maybe I got a pass for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Once you start to say, hey, nature's with me. I'm one with nature, right?
Right, right.
So I was so touched when I read that part with your book, and I was like, wow, you know, you survived because you're no threat to any of the animals.
Mhm.
Maybe the ones in the distance just were provoked, but when they got close, they didn't smell that scent of being scared. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that there could be something to that. I really
Yeah.
do, you know? I really do. Some people who read the book, they interpret it like it was man against nature, and nature won. I didn't get what I wanted. They didn't take me
Right,
out,
yeah.
you know? And so, yeah, each case is a little bit different, right, with the nerves you have going on or whatever. But yeah, in that particular
But I
case.
think with that, that pivotal point is with the lioness,
Yeah,
because it made you realize that, what am I doing? Triggered that positive effect in your brain,
Mhm.
which is healing.
yes.
Because when you feel good, you produce endorphins, which are feel-good hormones. When you're depressed, you have the cortisol hormones, which bring down depression, creates inflammation in the body.
Mhm.
So probably as you started, even this MZUNGU, and you're thinking it's some cool name or, nice white guy, you were feeling good about yourself. So it was kind of counteracting the hatred about life, right? So
Yes.
you
yes.
evolved to being a more positive person.
Yeah, I think so. And the animals that brought me the greatest joy and levity during that really dark time of my life. There was one set. It was in the Kakamega tropical rainforest, and they were the black and white colobus monkeys. And it would be raining, and they'd be all huddled. They'd be mad, like getting like a human. They'd be mad. They'd be sitting up on the trees, mad that it was
It's
that
cold
they were
and it's
getting
raining.
wet. Yeah. And then when the rain would stop, they would run along the tree, the branches, and they were just jumping back and forth across me. And it's really hard to be super depressed when you're watching that, you know. And then on Zanzibar Island, this was a few months later, there was this one very special spot where there was red colobus monkeys, and they all kind of lived on this one tree. And this guy took me to it. He says, you're not going to find it on your own, but I'll take you to that tree. So I get inside the tree, you know, I stand underneath and I say, I don't see any monkeys. And he says, just wait. So I'm standing there, and sure enough, one by one, they start coming down. And they're these beautiful, beautiful red. They look like that cartoon from the newspaper, Blondie. They have like the little eyebrows like that. And they start jumping all over me. They're jumping all over my body.
And they were just nice, huh?
They were sweet. They smelled like musky, but like lovely, like a cologne kind of. Like they smelled great, and they were so playful. I didn't touch them, but they jumped all over me.
Right.
And they would jump on my arm because the one who can jump the strongest on the limb of the tree is the alpha. And they were all trying to dominate me. They were all jumping on my outstretched arms as hard as they could, or on my shoulders as hard as they could.
Wow.
And so it was really hard. I think that was getting toward the end of the trip anyway, but that was like when my super dark nights of the soul came along, I wouldn't remember it. It was just living inside me, the animals playing on me like that, and the freedom that those monkeys had and their agility, right? And so that was another type of a positive animal interaction that it's hard to not be grateful for moments like that, you know, no matter how sad you might be.
So you've had that almost love and affection, right?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
How healing it is.
It was very, very healing, you know, because I was the foreign thing there, right? I was the exotic thing over there,
Right.
And they all embraced me. No, the animals and largely the people, they couldn't have been kinder to even the animals. That's not really a word you think, but they were kind to me. You know, they were forgiving to me for trespassing, into their territory.
So now, how long of a period of time were you on this journey?
Like 4 months.
Wow, 4 months.
Yeah.
And did you have any conflict with tribesmen?
No, I did not. If depending on where I ended up at night, sometimes I just slept in the middle of nowhere. But if there was a village nearby, I would enter the village, and I'd say, "Hey, who's the I don't remember what I said, the boss. I don't know if I said the chief or what I said." And they said, "Okay, go talk to that guy." So I'd ask permission to put up my tent in the village that night, and they were all very nice. And
Did they speak English?
Yeah, because East Africa was, British.
Oh, okay.
Was there for a while. So whereas West Africa, they would be French, not English. East Africa's so it's Kiswahili mostly, but they do have.
Did you know a little
service-
bit about the language, keywords?
No, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything.
But how did you plan all this? Did you get on a map and go, well, this explorer went this route, or what made you pick
So
that?
I had no maps. I had no plan whatsoever. What I had was a one-way ticket to Nairobi, okay? And I knew I wanted to circumnavigate Lake Victoria because that was the area that they finally discovered. You know, so the search for the source of the Nile, right? That was a mystery since the days of Alexander, right? Like how can they not know where the like it's thousands of years man couldn't find out where the source of the Nile was coming from. And so that's what Livingstone and Burton and Speke and all those guys, that's what they were hunting for. And so I went, I knew I would touch Lake Victoria. I knew I would, so I ended up making like a massive loop around Lake Victoria. But I just went town to town along the road that took me sort of in the direction. I'd say, hey, where's whatever the next town was? Where's Nakuru? And they'd say, go that way, you know? Yeah.
So as you're doing this journey and you're kind of reevaluating your life, was there another significant point during your journey which triggered something for you to say, I need to go back home?
Yes. So the deal was that I made with myself was I was going to stay in Africa until my money ran out. And I think, you know, for 4 months, I think I spent like $2,500 or $3,000. Like, you know, it doesn't cost much to get by when you're just living in a tent and eating whatever's around. And I said, well, if nothing takes me by the time I run out of money, then I'll do it myself. And there was this place in Wajir, it's in northeastern Kenya, and I had read an article years before about a boy like my age who had, it was an article maybe in the New York Times, who had died of starvation due to drought. They couldn't grow crops. And I thought, I want to die. Society's marginalized, you know, which I felt like I was. I said, I want to die where they're buried. So there was a cemetery up in Wajir. So that's where I was going to end up taking my own life. And now I was out of money, just about out of money, had a couple days left. And I said, all right, well, I got to catch a bus. I didn't have time to ride that far because I didn't have money. So I said, well, I'll catch a matatu up to that area. And all is lost. You know, I've been looking for a sign. I've had the Red Colobus experience. I've seen glimmers of reasons to live, but also I was so dead set on leaving this planet that you're up against that. Wait, no, I said I was going to do this. There's a reason to do it. But life has started actually pulling me back a little bit. And I thought, I went to bed the night before catching the bus. I said, I'm going to, if there's a sign, give me a sign. But if there's no sign, then I'm going to go through with it because I'm still at an impasse. And I buy the ticket to the matatu in the morning, have about 20 minutes to kill. I go around, I buy some little trinkets. I get on the bus. I'm stepping onto the bus. I give the bus driver my ticket. He grabs it, and as his arm pulls back with my ticket, there's, of all things, a bumper sticker on the dashboard. And it says, if a man steals your wife, the best revenge is to let him keep her. And more or less instantaneously, poof, all those dark storm clouds went away. And they kind of evaporated. And I thought, well, that is my sign, and duh. And like, it took me 4,000 kilometers of suffering to get to this moment, but it's a well-timed moment.
Wow. That's like bone chilling, man.
Yeah.
Holy shit. You're about to go to the final step of your journey.
Mm-hmm.
And that bumper sticker, that was no coincidence.
And that was on my bus that was
And
taking
your bus
me there.
that you just saw driving by.
Yeah.
How many buses go by in Africa, too?
Yeah.
It's not like here, LA, of 20 minutes, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So the experiences with the landscape, the people, and the animals, even if some of those experiences were scary, but they were all positive overall, the accumulation of those things. And to a degree, time heals all wounds. I mean, to a degree, that kind of played into it. You know, I had stayed alive long enough that reason started to come back in. And then when that bumper sticker was like this huge epiphany for me.
So now, after that point, did you get all thoughts of suicide out of your brain, or it was still kind of temporary out of your mind?
No, let's say for that period of my life, they were completely gone. Yes, for that period of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then you took the bus to go home.
Yeah, I still took that bus, but I got off in Nairobi, and then I think I wired my folks because I was broke, right? I said,
Right.
give me some, and then so they sent me some money, and I was able to.
Now, did they know what you were doing? Or they just thought
No,
you were on a
they
trip?
didn't hear from me for 3 months, 4 months. They didn't hear. They didn't. No, I didn't. I did. I think I sent them a postcard from somewhere, and I think they never got it. But so there was.
Well, did they even ask, like, what are you doing in Nairobi or wherever you're part of Africa?
No,
They-
the family
just
wasn't
figured-
like that.
oh,
They
okay.
just. They was. I was sort of a feral child, so they never
Oh.
protected me too much anyway.
So then when you came back, what was the first thing you did when you hit the U.S.?
My layover was through London, and so I took 3 weeks of kicking around. I think I went to Rome, Paris, Rome, Florence. So I kicked around Europe for a few weeks to sort of steady myself and reacclimate, recalibrate to wanting to stay alive, like looking both ways before you cross the street.
And reflecting back about your trip.
A lot of reflecting
And what
back, yeah.
what the next chapter of your life will be, right?
Because now I have this future that I wasn't going to have, right?
So now, like with the audience watching, what would you say to someone that was contemplating suicide? What would be your thoughts to encourage them to reconsider and to appreciate life? What, knowing what you went through, what would you want to hear someone say to you?
What the little trick that worked for me, that I experienced, was just make it through that day. Just make it through the day, And then night falls and it becomes harder sometimes at night. Make it through the night. Just make it till morning. Just do it in the morning. And then in the morning, just make it through today. Just keep pushing the
Short-term goals.
Yeah, just keep pushing that touchdown line. Just keep pushing it a few yards away. Each time you want to do it, I'll do it after dinner. Okay, I'll do it in the morning. Okay, and then that was just the only way. And I did that naturally. I didn't really know I was even doing that, right? So,
Right.
the book ends with I don't know why I survived. I don't know why, but life is precious and I'm still here. And that's what I would say. Like, stay in the fight. Stay in the fight. It sucks. It really sucks sometimes. But I'm very happy I'm here today. Do you know what I mean? I'm
too,
very happy I'm here today. So stay in the fight. Somebody needs you,
Yeah.
Somebody needs you. Think about them, hard as that may be in those really dark moments.
So now, where are you now? I mean, like, do you have some significant other in your life? Did you find new love? Where are you?
I did find new love, and we were together for 20 years. It was
wow.
great, lovely life experience. We ended up growing at different rates, so that had to stop. That I'm not in that relationship anymore, and that came with its own set of mental health problems. And that's actually what my next book is about, was that breakup and the PTSD that I had built up within me that I was unaware of. So that was the other period where suicidal thoughts reared up again a couple years back.
Oh, wow.
And
but you didn't think of actually doing this trip again or anything that...
I didn't think about doing this trip again.
But you had thoughts of it.
I had a gun in my hand.
Wow.
Yeah. This was a couple summers ago. It was really, really dark. I had to quickly, like, this is like the tunnel's closing in on you, and you can barely see the light at the end of it.
Yeah.
And I knew I need to run out of my apartment right now, so I dumped the bullets out of the revolver and split out into the street. It was the middle of the night, and just got out of my house with a big open sky above me, away from where I could self-harm, and I just stayed outside for hours until I kind of came back down. And
But it wasn't because it didn't work out. It was just you have overwhelming sadness and depression.
It was because there were aspects of the relationship that were unhealthy, and I didn't clock it at the time in
Right.
real time. And then so when we finished, my body sort of seized up on me. I had all sorts of physical problems, and
Right.
I could almost like not even breathe. and that
Were you
created
getting panic attacks?
Yes, exactly that.
Okay.
Exactly that kind of thing. And that was something I had never experienced before. The one I'm talking about from a couple of years ago is totally different physical experience, meaning how it responded in my body than the Africa one.
So did you ever at any point go to see a professional for psychotherapy or
I did.
Okay.
I sure did, yeah.
And was that what helped got you back on track?
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. Being able to speak to somebody with no skin in the game, right? They're just there
They don't know you,
Yep.
right? And
They don't care about the dramas in that sense. It's not personalized with them. And what I would say is they help keep me on the straight and narrow. Not go back to my old ways, not go back to.
Now, was this a psychotherapist, psychologist? What was the?
The only term I know is therapist.
Right.
So
yeah.
that's all I really know. I don't
Right.
even know what the degrees.
And
were.
how long a period did you go to the therapist before you started feeling good about yourself?
After the dark night of the soul, I went to my medical doctor and I broke down in her office and I said, "I'm gonna fucking kill myself, doc. I'm out of this life. Do something to me. Help me." And so they put me immediately in touch with a mental health specialist. And so I think that was 3 years ago at this point that I started, maybe 2.5, so 3 years ago.
Right.
And I'm still in it to this day. Yeah.
And how frequent do you see the therapist?
Once a week.
Right.
Yeah.
And this keeps you in check, keeps you.
It keeps me, if I don't have to answer to someone every week, then maybe you fall back into a bad habit again.
Right.
Or maybe I would have gone back with the problem person. That's because I missed her, And so having someone to say, no, don't try, do your best to not reach out to her. Do your best not to it's one of those things where keep kicking the goal line a little bit further
Right,
each day.
right.
No, so if you can make it through today without texting or without calling her, do that.
So you would say the combination of taking day by day instead of trying to project and think of what am I going to do, poor me, just deal with every day, one day at a time, and getting a good therapist has helped you turn around your life.
Absolutely.
Wow,
Absolutely.
that's great.
And then just if we have the 10 problems in front of us, just do one at a time. And because if you think about all 10, then it is overwhelming and you
Yeah.
kind of drown in it. But if it's just, I'm just going to deal with this one thing, I'm not going to think about the others. And again, that's sort of applying the brakes to the overall problem, or the hugeness of the problem slows you down a little bit. And so yeah, that was my recipe for sticking around.
Well, thank God those experiences you went through was enlightening and triggered positive energy. But wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, when I first heard of your story through Chris Phillip, who I know he's working on possibly make this into a movie too.
Yes.
Which he's the man to do it. He's amazing.
He's amazing.
And I really think this is like a cautionary tale, but it could be told in a humorous way because laughter and fun is healing.
Yeah.
And your experiences you can make in a kind of comical way, getting the right actor to play you and
Yep.
other people. This guy has this insane idea to go to Africa to be eaten by an animal because he can't take it anymore. He's so depressed. And then all these funny things happen, and he now feels with peace with himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he gets back, gets on track, gets a therapist, gets into a relationship, right? But it's still not a straight line, but you're going in the right direction.
Going in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, the extreme adventure of the trip, which is what the book is, it details, there's tons of humor in that extreme. It's so crazy. It's funny already. And then underneath that is someone who's dealing with a mental health crisis. And out of that came the book, which is really a love letter to Africa from my point
Yeah.
of view,
No, it sounds amazing, and I'm glad you shared the story because, again, mental health is a big issue today between what happened during COVID, the damage it did to not only adults but children that were forced to wear masks and stay in and
Yes.
couldn't see their friends. And the suicide rate, I don't know if you know this, but between the ages of 6 and 14 is the highest ever in 100 years. And a lot of that is because of what everybody went through during COVID, the damage that people were going through. Also, other things that's going on in society today. And a lot of parents they're kind of disconnected from their children. They're not really realizing that there's some issues. They're so distracted with their lives that they're not really realizing that their child is having some psychological issues.
Yes.
So I think a cumulative between COVID and other things, stressful life, a lot of young people today are feeling what you feel or felt at that time.
Yes.
Right? Confusion, and they need to get help. You need a professional.
And I think the good news about today, these days, compared to, I don't know, coming back from World War II or maybe Vietnam, I'm not an expert in those areas, but if there's a stigma against mental health issues, I don't feel it. Like, I'm more than happy to share my stories and to share how close I was to the end and high five you that I'm still here. Because I think in the old days, people would be afraid to talk about it because it was whatever, not.
Well, they think you're crazy.
Yeah, they think you're crazy, right? Or broken or something.
Right.
But these days, the society is a little more gentle towards that. We can share these stories and we can learn from each other and not really feel judged.
There are so many people that probably have had the same thoughts in their mind. You just verbalized it.
Yeah.
And you took an initiative and said, hey, I'm going to do it this way I want to go. And you went on that trek. But thank God all those things triggered this positive flow
right.
of endorphins that make you feel like healing because you counterbalance the negative hormones with the positive hormones that make you feel good about yourself. And then the experience of going, wow, and seeing that bumper sticker, it's kind of mind-blowing, brother.
Yeah.
I got to say, because what you went through and seeing that when you were right at a turning point to say, hey, I'll probably just do it myself.
Yeah.
Makes you believe whatever. There's a God, there's someone up there. A universe brings people together and there's healing, but I'm so glad you got on that bus, brother.
Yeah.
And you saw that.
I told the story because it was a crazy story to tell, but really underneath it all, it is a cautionary tale, and I would love it if somebody could read it and it would, to whatever degree, lift them up from a very dark place. That would be what greater service can we do than that,
Just the fact if someone has some bad thoughts and they're going to look at, wow, this guy just went to Africa, he's waiting for an animal or a hippo to kill him, right?
Yeah.
So, holy shit, they want to learn, hey, how did you turn it around? I could see you doing like guest speaking or, these seminars or webisodes to share with people. I almost had my life taken away. And thank God I didn't. And don't be self-destructive. Reach out, talk to someone, but take every day, one day at a time.
Yeah.
Because that's when you feel the feeling of doom, when you figure out what I'm going to do tomorrow, what I'm going to do next week, when you feel lost,
Yeah. And it is hard work, it is hard work, but it's not that hard that you can't pull it off,
Yeah. Well, David, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your journey and telling us about your wonderful book. And I wish you the best and anything that you do to help out. I'll introduce you to Mark Hansen, who has Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah.
I think it'd be perfect for a book that's about healing, but uses humor to tell the story. So it's not a very dark, depressing book to read.
Sure.
It's an inspirational book.
You'll be laughing throughout it.
Right.
Would be
So,
my goal.
but really, thank you for coming on.
Mike, thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story with you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, David. So please, if you have someone that's feeling sad, depressed, or some kind of hard psychological issues they're dealing with, share this episode. Just could actually save their life. Thank you for watching, and please remember, I need your help to support the show. Please subscribe. It keeps us going. Thank you.